Last night, the small bird at your feeder came within minutes of dying. Not from a predator. Not from the cold directly. From its own heartbeat slowing to almost nothing, deliberately. And the only reason it's back this morning is because of something it did in the last 20 minutes before dark. Most people watched it happen and had no idea they were watching a survival decision. What's actually happening inside that bird's body on a winter night is one of the most extreme biological events occurring in your yard, and understanding it will permanently change the way you watch birds in cold weather. You already know birds survive winter. What you don't know is how close to the edge of survival they actually are, and what their bodies are quietly doing about it every single night. The first thing to understand is that a small bird, the kind visiting your feeder right now, has a body burning through energy at a rate that would be catastrophic for any other creature its size. A chickadee weighs less than a sheet of paper. On a single winter night, it can burn through up to 10% of its entire body weight just staying alive until morning. By the time you see it at your feeder at dawn, it is already running low. What it eats in the next 30 minutes is not breakfast. It is recovery. At rest, that same bird's heart beats somewhere between 500 and 1,000 times per minute. That pace of living demands fuel on a scale that seems impossible, and in winter, when days are short and food is scarcer, the math becomes brutal fast. But here's what most people don't notice. The bird sitting still on your branch isn't resting. It is calculating. Every minute it holds position is a minute it isn't burning calories moving. Every puff of its feathers is a deliberate act, trapping warm air against the skin, reducing heat loss by a margin that can mean the difference between making it to morning or not. What looks like stillness is actually a highly active, precisely managed survival system running at full capacity. And that's only the surface of what's happening. The part that changes everything is what occurs after dark. Because the bird at your feeder at 3 in the afternoon is not the same physiological creature that wakes up the next morning. Something happens between dusk and dawn that has no real equivalent in human experience. It is called regulated hypothermia, and that clinical name doesn't come close to describing what it actually is. A chickadee will voluntarily allow its core body temperature to drop, in some cases by more than 10 degrees, during the night. The heart slows. The metabolism drops. The body powers down to its absolute minimum operating threshold. The heart slows. The temperature drops. The bird commits. There is no going back once the process starts. Not unconscious. Not dead. Suspended somewhere in between, using the bare minimum energy required to remain alive. If you could watch the heart of a small songbird through those night hours, you would see a rhythm so slow and irregular it would look wrong. But this is the system working exactly as it was designed to. Here is where it gets serious. That controlled shutdown has a ceiling. If the temperature outside drops past a certain point, the bird's reduced metabolic state can no longer generate enough heat to protect the core. The system built to save energy becomes a liability. And the bird cannot simply wake up and adjust, it is committed to that state until the body's own signals pull it back out. This is the window most people never hear about. The genuine window of danger that every small bird sits inside, every single winter night, in total silence, while you sleep. What determines whether they survive it starts the previous afternoon. At your feeder. The food your birds eat before dark is not food in the ordinary sense. It is fuel for a specific chemical process, and the type matters more than most people realize. Fat-rich seeds, sunflower, Niger, safflower, don't simply contain more calories. They metabolize differently. They produce heat through a process that continues even during the low metabolism night state, a slow internal combustion the bird's body can sustain without fully waking. This is why birds become almost frantic at feeders in the final hour before sunset on cold days. They are not being greedy. They are loading the furnace before a long, dangerous night. But here's what's really happening beneath that behavior. The bird doesn't know tonight's forecast. It has no way to predict how cold this night will be compared to last night. What it has instead is a sensitivity to pressure, day length, and the rate of temperature drop that allows its body to calibrate the depth of its overnight shutdown accordingly. On a night that will be brutal, the bird eats more, caches more, and drops its temperature less steeply, preserving a slightly higher metabolic floor as insurance. This system has been refined over millions of years. And yet, it is not foolproof. There are winters when it fails. And the signs of that failure are visible in your yard if you know what to look for. A bird that arrives at your feeder in the morning moving slowly, puffed up even in full daylight, reluctant to fly, that bird did not complete its recovery overnight. The metabolic shutdown that should have ended at dawn ran too long, or the body couldn't generate enough heat to come back up fully. That bird is starting the day behind. Less reserved than yesterday. A full day of cold ahead. And it is sitting right in front of you. If you've ever stood at your window on a freezing morning watching a bird sit perfectly still for minutes, barely moving, and wondered if something was wrong, you were watching one of the most precise biological recoveries in the natural world happening in real time. You just didn't have the frame for it yet. Most people see that bird and think nothing of it. Now you know exactly what you are looking at. What makes the difference for that bird in that moment is almost entirely what happens in the next 2 hours. A high-calorie meal eaten quickly, in relative safety, without the stress of competition, can bring a bird back from that edge faster than you might expect. The metabolic recovery is real and measurable. The body, once fueled, can restore its core temperature, re-engage its full cardiac rhythm, and return to full function within a short window. Your feeder on a cold morning is not supplementary. For some birds, on some mornings, it is the only reason they are still alive by afternoon. But there is a layer beneath even this. What your yard represents to the birds that use it in winter is not simply a food source. It is a known quantity in an environment full of unknowns. A bird that has mapped your feeder, that knows the sight lines, the escape routes, the timing of your movements, the reliability of what you put out, expends less energy there than a bird encountering it for the first time. Vigilance burns calories. Certainty preserves them. This is why the same individuals return to the same yards, year after year. It is not habit. It is rational energy accounting. Your yard was entered into a survival calculation, and it came up positive. The birds that survived this winter in your yard did not do it alone. They did it because someone maintained a reliable food source when the days were shortest and the nights were coldest. They built their survival strategy around your feeder. Around you. Whether you knew it or not, you were already part of this. The only difference now is that you understand what you were actually doing. The birds you see at your feeder in the coldest weeks of winter are not a random sample of the local population. They are, statistically, the ones who found your yard early, learned it well, and built it into their overnight survival calculation. You did not just watch them survive winter. You were part of the mechanism by which they did. Now go back to that bird on the branch. The still one, puffed up on a cold morning, barely moving. What you are looking at is not an animal resting. It is an animal that spent the night in a controlled near-death state, allowed its heart to slow to a fraction of its waking pace, dropped its body temperature to the edge of what it can recover from, and is now, in real time, climbing back. The stillness is the effort. The puffed feathers are the strategy. The position in the weak winter sun is deliberate, absorbing radiant heat to accelerate the recovery its body needs before the work of the day begins. Everything you assumed was passive is active. Everything that looked like waiting was working. The science of what happens inside a bird's heart in winter is not a story about fragility. It is a story about a system so precisely built that it can walk right up to the border of failure every single night, and then walk back from it every single morning. 4 months. Against conditions that would end most forms of life in hours. And now, when you see it sitting there absolutely still on a cold morning, barely moving, puffed against the dark, you will know exactly what it survived to get there. It walked right up to the edge of not coming back. And then it did. It does it every night. 4 months. Without anyone watching. Without anyone knowing. Until now.